not counting advertising and all those sorts of things, but just what they have in positions and things.
John, it might be helpful if you talk for a minute about how we teach corporations to use a review board methodology to decide which are the most meritorious ideas, because in every corporation there are many ideas when this kind of program is established. The question is, which of those do you actually take forward?
Yeah, I think that in this office that we're talking about, there's a set of criteria you can quickly use with any individual that has quote the idea. And to figure out where it is in time in terms of development. Does it take an awful long time? Or is it something that they can develop rather quickly? It's very quick to do a preliminary search to see if there are patents already out there on that or whether you can achieve one. And then also there's, most people that do this for a living, if we found the right person, could very quickly do back of the envelope calculations to say, you know, if you would put $20,000 into this to get intellectual property, could it be leveraged later on to get at least that or more? So with an idea of the development time, the ability to understand whether or not you really could get the patent, and whether you can quickly back of the envelope it out, it gets to the point where you can very quickly do this. I mean, I used to teach my son when he was 13 how to actually go into a business and pretty quickly figure out if it was making money. By trying to figure out the average price of the average product that's sitting there, how many products there are, what an average margin may be, what an average rate of an employee may be, how many hours they spend. You run it through your head very quickly and you say, this business is probably losing money. And I was amazed one time when we walked into a gas station as we were driving, that he walked out and said, this gas station is not making any money, Dad. This is a 13-year-old kid. So I believe that there are very quick back-of-the-envelope calculations you can do to figure out whether ideas have promise or not. We do that all the time with our clients, but of course it's bigger numbers and more diligence. But I think you could, in 15 minutes, vet an idea and figure out whether or not it had some value to proceed. And it's a great differentiator. If you get some of the greatest patents in the world, are extremely simple and have generated huge amounts of income for individuals. If you take interactive voice response, which is when you call up on a phone and they say choose from 1, 2, or 3, or say do you want to talk to this person or that. That simple idea, which was embodied very simply in a number of 2 or 3 patents, made Katz a multi-billionaire. If not before patents, somebody else would have used that idea and he would have got nothing for it. The idea of taking an optical picture of a check and then using that optical picture and putting it in a database so that you could then say that I've got the check so that therefore I can release the funds. This was an area that made another inventor about $1 billion in terms of being able to use that intellectual property for banks that want to take optical checks and use it as not the paper check, but use it as the means of currency. And if you look at IBM just right around the road, I ran a group at IBM called the Patent Factory, and we would generate 800 patents a year above and beyond the normal inventions. And IBM went from about 20 million to $1 billion in terms of licensing of intellectual property. Today it's even greater than that. And that's bottom line. Doesn't go through the SG&A and the costs. So if you look at a lot of companies, you get tremendous leverage out of intellectual property. But the problem is that the tools of this are usually not down at the individual level. So the question is, how do you connect these processes and tools simply to the individuals that can take advantage of it? Because a patent gives you the ability to stop others from making, using, or selling. So if you have that right, that's a pretty formidable right. And if you were first and you got the patent, you could leverage incredibly. And that's the missing ingredient, is that knowledge doesn't exist in an average individual. And so this office would try to find a way to connect that thinking down to the average individual. I mean, if you talk to most people, you'll recognize that they'll bemoan the fact that they had that idea. You yourself, you will have an idea, you say, I have that idea, but somebody else got the patent on it. Well, and most likely you had that idea even before the person had it, but you didn't know how to get a patent and you didn't know how to protect your idea. So I think education is a pretty big thing, for most companies. And we've helped companies take a $15 million business and sell it for $1 billion for its intellectual property. So it's just imagine one company in Vermont selling its assets for $1 billion. And imagine that person wanting to stay in Vermont. I mean, that's very possible. So that's why I support Senator Bartlett, just because after we talked to her about what happens in normal business, she connected the dots and said, if we could get the state to figure out some way to do this, to connect that education and filtering, that maybe there was a way to, move in this direction. And it only takes a half a dozen companies that actually, or individuals that actually have tremendous gains from this stuff to make a big difference. If you had $20 million because you happen to generate enough income through your intellectual property, what would you do with it? Would you stay in Vermont and try to build a business because you're a Vermonter? I think so.
It sounds so simple. And again, just from from my many conversations with with these folks, in a lot of ways, it sort of is remarkably simple, because there is that, as John says, it's the piece that's missing, and that's what and I don't see anyone else in this country has figured out yet how to move that forward. And the first example that he gave me was Green Mountain Coffee Roasters, and you look at what that company has done and how it's grown and how we, how we get all of those sorts of things to grow, and you think of all the interest in, in renewable energies and all those sorts of things. I think I'm really certain Vermont could be a real leader in that, and that would bode very well for our economic future.
You can get a patent. Here's coffee in a pod, and you have this filter in here. And because you have a foil on the top and a plastic case and a filter inside with coffee, so that someone can pierce this to put high pressure water into it, you can get a patent on that. And that patent leverages Keurig and the K-Cup so that someone gets a royalty on every one of these sodas. So the idea is it's just not about high-tech semiconductors where this stuff exists. So that's the kind of cool part. If you walk out of your car and you hit the button to lock it, and you walk into the restaurant and you say, did I actually lock my car? A lot of people get up and go see if they did, but what if there was a little indicator that you had on your device? So there's invention everywhere that is very simple. It doesn't require tremendous amounts of technology to do it.
So Nancy, you need to go out and do another whole set of inventors.
Oh, I know.
It really is.
It's very
It really is. There's so many.
If I had only patented Valproper.
Jeez. Yeah.
You were there. Remember that? Yeah. And yellow sticky notes.
Yellow sticky notes. That's right.